What's up, YouTube? It's OllieBeanz from iFreaking, and in today's video, we're going to cover how to choose a motherboard. Now, your motherboard is one of the most important components in a new PC build, so choosing the right one from the start is really going to make the rest of your build go that much easier. There's a lot of options and features to choose from, so let's get right into how to choose a motherboard. My goal with this video is to make choosing a motherboard easier for you. So I'm going to start with the big decisions and then narrow it down until you actually have the couple of choices that'll meet all your needs. So after that, it's up to, stuff like looks and maybe some extra options for expansion down the road. Now, the first thing you want to look at is your CPU, right? There's different motherboards for Intel and there's different motherboards for AMD. Right now, at the time of this video, AMD is using the AM4 CPU socket, and Intel is using the LGA 1151. Now, that's, of course, going to change depending on when you're watching this video, but either way, you still have to make the choice. Are you going for an Intel CPU or an AMD CPU? Then after that, the next thing to really narrow it down is going to be the size of your motherboard, which is going to really be determined by what you're trying to build. Right? Generally speaking, a gaming PC is going to use an ATX-sized motherboard. And if you're doing something for like a workstation or an overkill enthusiast build, not that there's anything wrong with overkill, you might want to go with an ETX board, which is larger than the ATX. Then, if you're building something like a media PC to house underneath your TV in your living room, you might want to go with a micro ATX board, that is micro or smaller than ATX. And if you really want to save the size and go even smaller, you're going to want to choose a mini ITX board. Now, the next part of that is going to be determined by your case, right? If you've already have your eye on a case that you're looking for, you want to make sure if it supports ATX, ETX, micro ATX, or mini ITX, depending on the size that you're going for that will meet the needs of your build. The next thing in motherboards is your chipset. Now, your chipset is part of your data flow management system, and I had to check that I had those words in the right order, and that's essentially how all the different components that are attached to your motherboard or plugged in will speak to each other. Right? And the chipset is going to determine a lot of other features in your board as well and what it can actually handle as far as connections or speed ratings and stuff of that nature. So let's get into those right now. I mentioned before trying to make how to choose a motherboard as easy as possible for you folks. And as you can see here, I'm on PCPartPicker.com, and I'll have this link down below, by the way. We are going to be using this site as well. But right here, I want to show you we have 3,345 compatible products. Now, I have these filters set to open completely, so that means this is how many options are on the market for you right now. And so we want to really trim this down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up System Builder here, which I already have opened up in another tab here. And what PCPartPicker allows you to do is it allows you to choose all the different parts of your build and then connect them together and give you information on compatibility issues, power usage, so how much of a PSU do you need? And it's a clutch tool when choosing a motherboard. Now, I'm also going to have a document for you folks that you can download on my Discord that'll also give you all of the other factors that you need to look at when choosing a motherboard, because as good as PCPartPicker is, I always recommend that you do your own research and actually look at the specifications pages from the manufacturer of your motherboard and your other components. But let's go here. Like we talked before, you first want to choose a CPU, right? I'm going to go with a Ryzen. I'm just going to go with the 5900X because, as you can see from the lights behind me, I'm building a new build in that heavy RGB build right now, and I'm going to add that to my build. Then I'm going to add a CPU cooler just quickly here. I'm going to do the EVGA 360 because it's a larger cooler and it's also the cooler I picked. And that way you'll be able to see if it can handle the 360 radiator placement. And before we choose the motherboard, we're going to choose some of these other components here first. Let's choose some RAM. Yeah, I just typed in RAM. Let's actually use some of these filters here. And so I'm not going to filter by manufacturer, even though I'm a fanboy of G-Skill. But we definitely want DDR4 RAM. Let's do 4 by 16 gigabytes. And let's just go with the G.Skill Trident Neo Z 64 gigabyte kit. Let's choose a video card. It's going to choose a 3080 Founders Edition. Now we'll choose one that's actually available. And then let's choose a case, because a case is going to play a big factor in your motherboard as well. I'm just going to choose the first one at the top here. And now that we've got some of the other components plugged in that we know that we wanted, and really I suggest just going in here and plugging in the parts that you know you need, right? And so let's go with the part this video is actually about, choosing a motherboard, right? Now, that 3,345 components got reduced down to 102, right? Everything listed here is going to match up with your other choices automatically. And can you see how this makes choosing a motherboard much easier and just a much simpler process for you, right? And so what you might want to do here, and see, we've already got AM4. AM4 is the only available option. Everything else is grayed out because AM4 is the CPU socket for Ryzen, for the Ryzen 5000 series anyway. They did have, you know, AM3, AM2, and different variations prior to that. Chipset. We talked about chipset before as well, right? Now, with the new Ryzen chipset, it's a little specific. You generally speaking, want to choose an X57 board at the time of this video, because the other boards that you do see available here can have conflicts, because you might have to update the BIOS, and then you'll need a board that has BIOS flashback. And so for ease of use and ease of, you know, just plug and play, I would recommend doing an X570 currently. And your chipset, again, is going to determine some of your other features. The X570 for the Ryzen CPUs, or the Ryzen 5000 series CPUs, is the top tier chipset currently. So you're not going to limit yourself on any features there. And let's turn this down. And then memory max, right? We have a 64 gigabyte kit, right? But do we want to have availability for expansion down the road, right? So you might want to set this to, we'll say 128. Bring that to memory max 128. That went down from 105 to 45 compatible products. DDR4 is the only type of RAM you're going to need, because that's the only type of RAM that is compatible with the Ryzen 5000 series CPU we chose earlier. Color, that's going to be up to you. Now, SLI and Crossfire, they're really not used as much as they used to be back in the day. Not a lot of games support them, but if you need this capability, then make sure you select that. Now, the PCI 16 slots, those are the slots for your graphics card, right? That's where your GPU is going to live. And so you do need at least one PCI 16, but if you, again, want to SLI and Crossfire, you might want to bring this up a little bit, or if you're going to expand. Now, most expansion slots are going to be in the smaller, either X8, X4, or X1 form factor. So say if you have a USB hub that can be a PCI 1 or 4, you're going to want to make sure you have one of those slots to be able to use. If you have an SSD, your SSD especially can come in currently in the form factor of SATA, or it can come in PCIe, or it can come in, the more common for the next generation is M.2, but you want to make sure you have a PCIe slot if you're looking for that type of SSD. You want to make sure you have a SATA gigabyte port, 3 gigabyte ports, or 6 gigabyte ports. Express is less common, and you want to make sure that how many are there, right? How many hard drives are you going to have on your machine, right? Do you have one 12 terabyte drive, or do you have 5 2 terabyte drives? So that's going to be important for you. M.2 slots, again, is going to be for your SSDs. And whether or not you need onboard Ethernet or onboard video. And these headers here, USB 2.0 and USB 3.2, Gen 1 and Gen 2, that's going to be based on your case a lot as well, because these are headers, right? So these aren't on the I/O on the back of the motherboard, right? That's then on the back of your computer. These are actually going to be connections on the motherboard for the front part of your case in most cases. You want to make sure it has the available ones you need there. And then if it supports ECC, generally speaking, you're going to go yes on that, or no, excuse me. And then if you need Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi is less common, especially in gaming builds, but for a media PC, you might want to do that on Wi-Fi. And so we have 45 choices here from 3,345, I think it was. And so you want to just go here and then look at your look and feel and then any other features that you might have. Now, if you want to even further bring this down, right, let's just add on a motherboard, right? We'll just go with this one here for now. Add on your other features, right? Optical drives, right? No compatible. Sorry, I was looking for hard drive. Storage here. I don't know why I couldn't see that. And so storage, let's do a Samsung Evo, which is an M.2 drive. Let's add more storage in the form of SATA storage. We'll just pick one of the top ones here to make it easy. Add a bunch more of these. What I'm doing here is I'm giving you a scenario where you have something that not everybody's going to have, right? Not everybody has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 SATA hard drives on their machine. But then when I go here and I remove this motherboard and go to choose another one, it brings it down to 102 compatible products because I have enough hard drives to take up 6 SATA ports on the motherboard. And there you have it. I mean, PCPartPicker is really the only tool you need when choosing any computer component, but especially when you're choosing a motherboard. Go in here, type in some of the components that you know you want, which is really usually going to be stuff like your CPU and your GPU and maybe the amount of RAM, and then use the filters to narrow down your motherboard choices and then look for any incompatibility pop-ups. A good example of that is if I do the B55, I'll have this compatibility warning, which I actually spoke about before, and you can see details below. Some AMD 550 chipset motherboards may need a BIOS update prior to using Vermeer, which the 5000 series is a Vermeer CPU, so you may need to upgrade your BIOS to a different version that the CPU currently supports. And if you choose a motherboard that doesn't have BIOS flashback, then you'll need to have a CPU that can go into the motherboard that can actually work with the current BIOS in order to update it to the newest BIOS. And so for that reason, I definitely suggest using PCPartPicker as well because it's going to give you notifications for when issues arise. And you can see here too, warning, 4 additional internal 3.5 drive bays are needed. That's most likely going to be a warning for my case, which is right here. I'm guessing the case doesn't only allows for 2 drives and doesn't have room for the other 4. And there you have it. Choosing a motherboard can be a complicated process, but using some basic knowledge and tools like PCPartPicker.com, you can really make it much easier for you. I'm also going to put together a cheat sheet, essentially, on the OllieBeanz Discord for you that you can download that will have all the different main pieces you need to look at for a motherboard. It's going to include things like which CPU you're using, which chipset do you want within that CPU family in order for features, the sizes of motherboards, RAM capacity, PCIe chip slots, whether it supports M.2 drives. Let's see, what else do I have on my list here? The max RAM, expansion potential, things like whether you want RGB or ARGB, and other factors there for you. So I'll put that link down below. It's just discord.olliebeanz.com, and you can download that cheat sheet for yourself. Now, if you found this video helpful, if it's made, the anxiety of choosing all the right parts, especially how to choose a motherboard, easier for you, I'd appreciate a like on the video. It does help the channel. It's free to do. Maybe even subscribe to be notified of when I put out new videos. I do a lot of hardware reviews and give out a lot of free resources. And definitely hit that bell so you're definitely notified right when I put out new content. And if you ever have any questions about the videos that I do, I stream under the name OllieBeanz on Twitch 3 nights a week, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Best thing to do is just give it a follow and you'll be notified when I go live. You can come ask me questions about the videos that I do, maybe a question on how to choose a motherboard for yourself, or just come bust my chops while I game. I'm OllieBeanz from iFreaking Love This. I'll see you in the next video. Be good to each other.